Hey, no, you listen to me. Look at me. I don't care what anyone says. You could absolutely play R2-D2 in The Last Jedi, the musical. Tui, come on. Welcome to Teacup for One. My name is Matt and I have 2 degrees. And my little droid buddy Tui over here, he's bummed out because he has a dream to play R2-D2 in The Last Jedi, the space-tacular musical. But he doesn't think he's good enough, or he doesn't think that he would ever stand a chance at being cast as R2 because he looks different than the droid who played R2-D2 in the films. So it got me to thinking, and it inspired me for today's video, where we are going to be talking about Disney and non-traditional casting. That's right. Okay, now you're probably wondering, Matt, what is non-traditional casting? And to answer that, I am just going to fully read you the definition that was put out back in the 80s by Actors Equity, also known as the Actors Union. Also known as the union that still hasn't taken me because I guess I'm not talented enough for them or whatever, but here we go. According to them, non-traditional casting is the casting of ethnic, minority, and female actors in roles where race, ethnicity, or sex is not germane to character or play development. So it's basically the act of casting performers who break away from traditional expectations that are associated with a given role or a character. And it's something that's always really fascinated me, especially when it comes to non-traditional casting of Disney characters. Because if there are any characters that have a set of expectations just like welded to them, it's Disney characters. Well, because Disney is so popular, these characters keep coming back in different forms like stage shows or remakes, and it begs the question, what opportunities are presented when an established and beloved character is given a second life, either on stage or on screen? When is there an obligation to stay true to what came before? And when is there an opportunity to let any given role or character evolve beyond its original incarnation? Now, obviously, these are huge topics for discussion, and there's no cut and dry, black and white answer to either of those questions, and truth be told, I don't think there ever will be, because it's a conversation that we need to continue having. It's a conversation that needs to continue to grow and evolve. And I'm not here to pretend that I have all the answers or to present you with some groundbreaking, life-changing insights, but I do have a perspective, and that's what I want to talk about today, because honestly, I think non-traditional casting is a beautiful thing that opens up so many possibilities for storytelling, especially when you apply it to Disney, which is what the focus of this video is going to be. Okay, I have wanted to do this video ever since last year when I did my video about the evolution of Belle and just touched on the historic casting of Toni Braxton as Disney's most important character. Yes, Belle is Disney's most important character. Watch the video. Tell me if you disagree. Now, at the time, it might not have even seemed like that big of a deal. Toni Braxton played Belle in 1998. By that point, Beauty and the Beast had been open on Broadway for almost 5 years, and Disney was at the point when they were starting to market the stars of the show almost as much as the show itself, which is my really gentle way of saying that Disney had turned to stunt casting. No shame in that. All the Broadway shows do it. Well, truth be told, a little bit of shame in that. But it's what you have to do, because after a show has been open for a certain amount of time, a production has to compete with the bigger, shinier, newer, more Tony Award-winning shows. How do they do it? By putting people on stage that are household names, so that the tourists pay to see the stars, sometimes more than the show. Yeah, so maybe you've already seen Chicago, but you haven't seen Chicago with Christy Brinkley from that Billy Joel music video yet. Maybe you've already seen Annie, but you haven't seen Annie starring Jane Lynch from Glee.
I want to pit these kids against one another.
Maybe you've already seen Beauty and the Beast, but you haven't seen Beauty and the Beast starring Donny Osmond. Yes, that happened. more than once. I didn't see Toni Braxton as Belle, and there's not a ton of footage of her in the role that's been made publicly available, so I can't comment on whether she was any good or not. But what I can say is that out of the 17 actors who played Belle on Broadway, she debatably had the biggest impact on the role for two reasons. First, it took Disney a lot of work to convince Toni Braxton to take the role and to play Belle, and reportedly one of the main reasons she ended up signing the contract is because she went out for dinner with Tim Rice, Beauty and the Beast on Broadway's lyricist, and after 2 bottles of wine, he just casually said, "Oh, Toni, if you take this show, I'll write you a brand new song, it'll just be yours." And then when he sobered up the next day and she agreed to take the show, he realized, oh no, now I actually have to write a brand new song for Beauty and the Beast. Long story short, he ended up writing A Change in Me.
Here to debut A Change in Me, written especially for her, please welcome Toni Braxton.
Good job.
The song was such a hit that it became a permanent fixture in the show, and it's one of the best songs in Beauty and the Beast. And it's there because of Toni Braxton.
But in its place I feel a new life begin.
And it's so good and real, it must come from within. And I never thought I'd leave behind.
But the bigger impact is that Toni Braxton playing Belle marked the first time a black performer was headlining a Disney musical on Broadway, and the first time a black performer was playing a Disney princess. Now this is a perfect example of non-traditional casting, because you have Belle, one of the most recognizable and beloved Disney characters, being brought to life on stage by an actor who looks different from how the character was portrayed in the movie. And that simple act of breaking away from the expectations set by the animated film led to so many brilliant things. And I think that's an overarching theme with the original production of Beauty and the Beast just overall. The show worked better when they moved away from the animated movie, and if anything, trying to reproduce the film on stage was more detrimental than it was helpful. There's this really amazing quote from Susan Egan. Jeffrey Katzenberg said the best version of the show he ever saw was our final run-through in the rehearsal hall before we had costumes and makeup, because it still worked. It worked without any of it. And this is something that I've heard in interviews more than once with different people that were involved in that original production of Beauty and the Beast. The Disney magic is in the music and in the story, and they were working too hard to try to recreate the animated film on stage, and just because it worked once doesn't mean it's going to work a second time. And if anything, being married to a certain aesthetic or a certain look is going to do more harm than good. And I think that's why Lion King, when it went to Broadway, ended up being so innovative and so drastically different from anything visually that we saw on screen in the animated Lion King. And that is the reason Lion King on stage is so mind-blowingly good. It took all the Disney magic of the script and the music and brought it to life in a way that was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before. And Julie Taymor, the director, did so much to breathe life into it on stage. But going back to this whole conversation of non-traditional casting, one of the most interesting choices she made in the adaptation was the choice to literally rewrite an entire role. Remember Rafiki, the male baboon from the film? Well, if you've ever seen Lion King on stage, you know that that role was reworked for a female performer. Why? For a few reasons. First, Circle of Life. Circle of Life is one of the most iconic parts of the film, and it would have to pack the same punch on stage. But here's the thing. In the movie, Circle of Life is sung by 2 unseen vocalists, a man and a woman. So one of Taymor's tasks when adapting Lion King into a musical was figuring out who's going to sing Circle of Life. Like, When you think about it, the obvious character would be Rafiki, but you also needed it to be sung by a vocalist who could do both the Zulu language portion and the English language portion, ideally in the same key that Carmen Twilly sang the song in the film. And then, during the development process, Julie Taymor actually learned that in South Africa, many shamans are female. And that was when it all clicked into place, and she realized that Rafiki should be portrayed as a female character, and then she could open the show with Circle of Life. And it was a brilliant, brilliant choice for so many reasons. It strengthened Rafiki's role as this omnipotent storyteller. Plus, it strengthened the show's connection to South African culture, and it infused the show with a strong female presence that was missing from the movie. And beyond all the dramaturgical elements, it created an amazing role in the biggest blockbuster musical of all time for a type of performer who otherwise wouldn't have that many opportunities to headline a Broadway show. Rafiki is a prominent female character in a Disney musical who's not defined by being a mother, a princess, or a villain. And she is ageless. This is a role that could be played by a 20-year-old just as easily as it could be played by a 70-year-old. And as I understand it, the role, more often than not, is played by legitimate performers from South Africa. And anytime I've seen the show, whoever's playing Rafiki is usually listed in the program as doubling as the production's dialect and language coach. And I think it's so beautiful having the performer who's playing the storyteller having an actual active role in coaching the entire company to accurately tell the story. Like, it's not my place to make this assumption, but I feel like it adds a stronger layer of authenticity to South African culture. Or at the very least, it's way more effective than just throwing someone in the Rafiki costume from Animal Kingdom and having them run around the stage. Anyway, the point is, the choice to rework Rafiki into a female role was just one of the many deviations Lion King made from the animated film that made it work so well on stage. And it wasn't the last time a Disney character was gender swapped for the stage adaptation. It happened with pretty prominent characters in Tarzan as well as Newsies. So in the case of Tarzan, Terk the gorilla, who in the animated film was a female gorilla, was reworked as a male character for the Broadway show. Now, Tarzan didn't last on Broadway for that long, and I really don't know much about the show or the production, aside from the fact that the entire set was like a giant bouncy castle, which looked like so much fun. But based on my labor-intensive Wikipedia research, it looks like the bulk of Tarzan's animal friends from the cartoon were cut entirely and just replaced by a nameless ensemble of gorillas led by Terk. So I feel like the choice to turn Terk into a male character was to create like a really strong brotherly bond between Tarzan and Terk that could then be disrupted and shaken when Jane enters the picture. Because think about it, Tarzan is the story of a man who is raised as a gorilla, learning that there's an entire community of humans falling in love with one of those humans, and then being put in a position where he has to decide if he wants to stay with the gorilla family or join the people. Now, call me crazy. I don't think there's any way to effectively create the world of a man in a community of gorillas on stage nearly as effectively as you can do in an animated film. Like, that story needs to be represented visually, and on stage it doesn't work as well. So in order to tell the story of Tarzan, you have to really lean into the relationships, and I think the choice to make Terk a male character is really effective, because then the audience doesn't have to think about gorillas versus humans. The audience can recognize that Tarzan has this brotherly bond with someone that he's grown up with that is then being threatened by a girl. And that is a story that everyone can recognize and invest in, and it's strengthened just by that one change. I think, again, Tarzan kind of flopped on Broadway, so who's to say if it actually worked? But then just look at Newsies, one of the really successful Disney Broadway musicals. I think the gender swapping there was a bit of an easier decision. They just needed a better love story than what we got in the Newsies movie. So they made the decision to turn Bill Pullman's reporter character into a female love interest for Jack Kelly. We got some cool songs out of it, and like with Lion King, it gave the show a stronger female presence. And spoiler alert, the one thing I found kind of entertaining about the choice to turn that character into a girl was the fact that they turned her into Pulitzer's daughter. So even though Newsies takes place in New York City in 1899, Disney still found a way to work in a princess. Respect. These are just a few examples, but they all show us the potential to reimagine a story when it's given a second life. A potential to shift character relationships, a potential to strengthen a story, and to give opportunities for actors to be in a show where there might not have been a role for them before. As I see it, that's one form of non-traditional casting, adjusting a role as it's written in the script. The other form of non-traditional casting is what we saw when Toni Braxton played Belle on Broadway. On paper, the role is what people expect, but the performer bringing that role to life might look different than what people expect. But that is a topic of conversation that merits its own video and is going to be getting its own video, so stay tuned for part 2. But I will just say here and now that the gist of part 2 is going to be that Disney is for everyone, everybody deserves to see themselves represented, and mermaids don't exist, so stop going online and telling me what they are supposed to look like. Hashtag yes, my Ariel. Anyway, that concludes yet another episode of Teacup for One. Now, let me know in the comment section down below, what is your favorite example of non-traditional casting in the world of Disney? And if you want to be the first to know when part 2 of this video series lands, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you're not subscribed already. It's super easy. All you need to do is click on my face. Thanks for joining us today, everyone. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees, and that's the Teacup for One. Go away.